What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review as we are in the final weekend of reviews, so there's only going to be a couple of more reviews coming out before we end up going through the year-end lists and all that kind of stuff, so kicking off the final weekend of November, the weekend of November 29th, we have the debut offering from Ritual Fog, But Merely Flesh. This came out on November 29th on Transcending Obscurity Records, and like I said, this is the band's first album, and this is described on the Metal Archives as death metal band from Memphis, Tennessee. However, I think this is kind of like a hybrid of death metal, thrash metal, and hardcore, because there's a lot of those kind of moments on this album. So I was curious to check this one out, considering Transcending Obscurity, for the most part, doesn't miss, at least from what I've listened to from that label over the past couple of years. But here we go. So after the kind of pointless intro, Mysticism, which was this like horror movie synth intro, it goes into Desolate Chasm, which this song kind of more or less kind of sets the mood for this album, where I actually do kind of like the production on this album. Like, the guitar tone sounds kind of like 90s death metal, kind of reminiscent of bands like Morbid Angel and maybe even Immolation, Incantation, those kind of bands. But the snare tone is actually pretty unique on here. The opening riff on this track kind of reminds me a little bit of Suffocation, but it's on top of a groove. And then it gets into like this double time stomp that definitely kind of harkens back to Bolt Thrower a little bit. And then the vocals, I gotta say, the vocals kind of remind me of like a hybrid between Max Cavalera and John Kevill from Warbringer. Like, they kind of fit like closer to a thrash metal band or even a hardcore band rather than death metal. Like, there's not really a lot of like death roars or death screams going on here. It kind of feels more like thrash and hardcore type vocals. And then you do get a lumbering groove with tremolo riffs that kind of make it feel a little bit more towards death metal, kind of like Morbid Angel and maybe even Incantation a little bit. But really, when it comes down to a lot of these songs on this album, honestly, a lot of the ideas going on here are very repetitive and kind of stock, in my opinion. Like, they kind of go for grooves the whole way through, lumbering grooves, and it kind of stays in one gear, which is mostly about the groove. Like Slime Blade, the following track, yeah, there's a nasty riff on top, but on top of a lumbering groove, and lumbering groove is kind of the thing that holds this album back. Like, I love lumbering grooves when done right and done tastefully. Here, I think the band does it too much. Like, you get lumbering grooves on Desolate Chasm, Slime Blade, the following track, Nocturnal Suffering, Demented Procession has a lumbering groove. So yeah, it's like about over half of the album has a lumbering groove going on, which again, kind of make the songs kind of interchangeable or feel interchangeable and don't really stand out. But Nocturnal Suffering, at least that as well as Slime Blade, does bring in some newer elements, like bringing in a little more of the thrash metal elements coming in. And even starting with Nocturnal Suffering, another thing does come up here that is kind of cool, and that's some doomy breakdowns, or like chugging breakdowns that almost border on slam at times. Demented Procession starts off with a doomy riff on top of a groove, and there's even an atonal melody that comes in. And then Fog's Sermon, the doom riff that starts off this, is a little more melodic. Like, there's a doom melody going on. Then it does get a bit thrashy again. Like, there are some thrash moments that come up on, Slime Blade, Nocturnal Suffering, Fog's Sermon, and that's pretty much it. And then Carnal Pain, the following track after Fog's Sermon, definitely is where it starts taking a turn into more hardcore, like more like almost bordering on punky rhythms, but also with like big grooves that feel closer to hardcore than it does death metal. But the chugging riff that opens Carnal Pain is pretty cool, and then probably the best moment on the entire album shows up about halfway through Carnal Pain. Doomy riffs, but it feels a little bluesy, and it kind of works. And then you even get like twin lead melodies, so back to back great moments. But it's just a shame the rest of the song was just kind of there. Sentient Chamber, kind of more or less the same thing, like nasty riffs, but with a more hardcore feel. But there's some dissonance going on, which I do love me some dissonance, and even clean melodies. And then the closing track, the title track, starts off almost a lot like a Sangwa Sugabog song. Like it's grooves, there's chugs, little blast beats, the bass actually pops in pretty well. And then it does turn thrashy before you get a breakdown with a lead, which was actually pretty cool. So, yeah, they are trying different things, but for the most part, it's just kind of stuck in a couple of different gears, and they don't really deviate a whole lot. And also, these moments and parts just kind of sound stock, like as if I've heard them before, and it just didn't come off as original enough. Not saying that being derivative is a bad thing, but I was just kind of expecting a little more energy and a little more thought put into these songs. For the most part, there was some moments where I kind of felt a little bored. I'll be honest. Like I thought there were some moments on this album that just kind of left me bored. So again, I don't like giving out negative reviews, but I can only give this 2 stars. It's not a bad album. It's just kind of there and lackluster to me. It's mostly moments within songs that showcase potential, but ultimately the songs themselves just, again, kind of feel like copy paste death metal, thrash metal, and hardcore, and it just didn't really excite me much. But again, this is their first outing. Perhaps it's a case of, well, you gotta start somewhere. Maybe their next album, they'll pick up the pace and come out with something wild. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you for watching. Keep your horns high and your dreams wet.
Thank you for your patronage.